Alex, I thought there'd be a chance I wouldn't be here. I thought I'd be on the trial of the century.
What was the trial of the century?
I don't know. I didn't get
They
assigned
didn't
to
even
one.
tell you what the trial was?
No, so I went. Um, so I got up early. You got to be there by 9:30 was my assigned time. Although
And this
as
is
soon as
yesterday, right?
yes, it was yesterday. Although as it turned out when I got there, pretty much doesn't matter when you show
Mhm.
up. They just hand you a number, and then once they get through that stack, they hand you on to the next set of numbers. So it actually seems like it would have made more sense to get there early. I don't know.
Right.
Anyway, so I get there, and then they put you in a little, holding area. They got crappy TVs and no plugs and no Wi-Fi, but you can bring all your devices at least. And so then my number gets called. Our group gets shuffled away, and we're supposed to go to some courtroom. And then they say, "Oh, sorry, all the courtrooms are full. We don't need anyone else right now. Go back to the holding area," which is where I remained for 6 more hours
Oh
until
God.
4 p.m. And then they said, "It turns out we don't need anyone. Get out." And they gave me $17.10 or something like that, and I went on my way and came back home.
What'd you spend that $17 on?
I haven't figured it out yet. I don't want to spend it all in one place. I was gonna go right onto Silk Road, but then they shut it
Hmm.
down.
Yeah,
So
your
where am I
timing on that was
supposed to
rather
get my
poor.
drugs? I'll have to ask Jeff.
Yeah, you're gonna have to ask Jeff, see if his old roommate still has any of those connections to Indian dick pills through the internet or anything.
So that was it actually ended up being a little bit disappointing because it's like if you're gonna have to go and do that whole thing, at least would have been fascinating to have gone through the process, and instead all I did was sit in a room and they covered my travel expenses and lunch for the day,
Yeah.
basically. So, oh well. Have you ever been on jury duty?
No, believe it or not, I have somehow managed to avoid it entirely. I think it has something to do with the fact that I refused to stay put for a few years there, so I wasn't really in one place long enough. Though I guess in California by now they should have gotten around to me, but they never did.
See that
Uh,
I thought that too. See, I moved every single year for 5 years in a row, which is how I explained how I never got anything. But then
yeah.
I move here 2 months in, and my number gets drawn. I mean, it's a lottery. I assume it works like that way in most states, where you just get pulled out when you're uh, up for being on a jury. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm off the hook for another year. But
Yeah.
I was also told by a couple of friends, because immediately after I mentioned that I was going to be on jury duty, people were like, "Oh, well, here's what you do if you don't want to be on it. Here's how you get out of it." And everyone jokes about that, but I imagine once you're actually sort of like on the stand, most people are not in a position to just start actively lying or be funny. But that because I'm a reporter, they more or less just like summarily dismiss any reporters. They just
Oh,
don't want
nice.
any. It doesn't matter what you write about. So they're like, if you want to be on the jury, like if you find that legitimately interesting, like say that you're a writer or something or a critic, like because if you say reporter or journalist, doesn't matter what you cover. They just assume you're part of a news organization and want nothing to do with you. So
Oh,
I
I
think
am
I
so using that if I ever get called for jury duty. Absolutely, 100%.
so in between all that, I've been playing a lot of GTA. What have you been up to this week?
Oh God. I actually have played very little GTA, mostly because I've been reviewing Beyond all week, which I
That's
cannot talk
right.
about yet, unfortunately.
Wink for
Yeah.
each star you're going to give it.
I haven't even. I'm still like an hour or two away from the ending, so I don't want to
Have you
start.
cried?
I don't want to. No, but there have been a couple of moments where I did get a little heartstring tug. I'm not gonna lie. There was a
Okay.
little. I felt a little something. I felt
Okay.
something inside.
Is it
Um,
is it weird? Is it really weird? Is it
Here's what
less
I'll
weird?
say.
Be very vague.
It's David Cage weird, but it's
Okay.
not the. It has thus far. It has not been the extreme end of the David Cage weird that I was sort of afraid might pop up. So
Kind of like
I
when we
was.
saw the E3 trailer or like some trailer where it was like, why is Ellen Page in Afghanistan or whatever? And it's
You
just
know
like, is
what?
this what this game is going to be?
But again, embargoes can't really give
Yeah,
any
yeah.
serious detailed impressions. But what I will say is that shit that confused the hell out of me about that game, for the entirety they were promoting it, makes a lot more sense once you actually play it as one long coherent story. There are
Okay.
parts that still don't completely fit together, but they answered some questions I had. I
Okay.
will leave it at that. I cannot say any more
All
until
right.
I think next Tuesday is the embargo, like in the morning. So I'll have that review well ahead of that done.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. It is certainly, I think, the most interesting game of this holiday season. I mean that somewhat facetiously, but I liked Heavy Rain quite a bit,
Yeah,
and I am legitimately interested to see Beyond, if only because it feels like it's weirdly coming so under the radar. I assume that's partially just because all the muscle is going into PS4,
right.
and there's just not an opportunity to really sort of double down on getting this game in people's heads. The kind of people that are going to buy it are aware of it and follow David Cage and his stuff. The people that don't like it, didn't like his stuff, don't need to be convinced. But did you actually have you played like Indigo Prophecy?
Yeah, I reviewed Indigo Prophecy for
Oh,
Games
did you?
back in the
Oh,
day,
okay.
and I played through a decent chunk of Heavy Rain, but honestly, I didn't like it very much.
Mm.
So the story in that one did nothing for me. Like, I didn't like the characters, I didn't like the weird multiple focuses. I thought it was just way too scattered for what it needed to be. So I had some trepidation going into this one, and I again cannot say one way or the other,
Yeah.
but it has held my attention, and I will leave it at that.
All right. And so you were just kind of laser focused on that all week, nothing else?
I have, and then like that's as far as like what I've been doing at home. But I've been going out and seeing a lot of games as well. There's been a lot of events around here for various things, some of which is embargoed and I can't talk about yet. But
Okay.
a couple of things I did go see that I can talk about. Ubisoft had a bunch of people out to see Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed 4, as if we haven't seen enough of Assassin's Creed 4 at this point.
I'm just gonna rock back and forth
No,
and
it's
think of
okay. I'm
all
going
the
to keep this one
trailers.
short. I'm going to keep this one short.
No, I'm actually like someone playing it is far more interesting than learning about pirates for the ninth time.
Well, to be fair, they didn't really let me get hands-on time with it
Okay.
exactly. They did let some people play Assassin's Creed 4, but there were a whole bunch of people in the room, so I didn't get a chance to actually like play it. But I got to
Which
see some
which
more.
version? Which version?
It
Do you know?
was run. It was ostensibly the PS4 version, but it was running on
Okay.
like one of those giant dev kits.
Okay.
So
All right.
it looks real good. I mean, the thing I'll say about that game is that they have definitely amped up the visual stuff a lot. But I mean, as far as whether they have fixed any of the big problems with AC3, I cannot say definitively one way or the other. I mean, mechanically, it seems very similar, other than the heavy focus on the naval stuff. There's a giant ass open world, and there's a lot of stuff to do in there. I don't know how interesting any of it is to do yet, so I'm kind of avoiding saying one way or the other. But visually speaking, again, just splendid. Looks amazing. Looks fantastic on the next gen stuff. We'll see how it plays.
That
Uh, it,
water looks incredible.
it
Now,
really does.
that's the thing that consistently impresses me. And at this point, I'm just sort of actively ignoring the game because I I am somehow they have given me enough space to be interested again, despite
Yeah.
my extreme distaste for 3. I think partially because I think if 4 was set in colonial America again, I'm out, like
Right.
zero interest. But they have changed the setting enough, and spearing sharks looks cool, and the water just looks. I don't know, something about the water just looks unbelievable.
All the world stuff looks incredible. That one I'll 100% give them. The boat stuff from AC3 has been refined in some ways here, so that stuff is probably a little bit better. But again, I don't really want to say definitively how it plays because they didn't put a controller in my hands, so I
Right.
can't say. Watch Dogs, they just showed off a couple of missions that I hadn't seen before. Just some more basic vigilante stuff, kind of showing off some of the mechanics of that stuff that we've kind of already seen, like the hacking, kind of using the different environmental stuff with your phone to sort of fuck with enemies before you kind of run in and shoot them all in the face. Uh, Again, also visually, that game looks pretty spectacular. Mechanically, there's some really interesting stuff going on there with the open world and the hacking and all that. The one thing with that game that has never completely come together for me, at least in terms of just understanding it, is the story.
Right.
They haven't talked a lot about it, and every time I watch that game, I realize the whole point of that game is that you are basically cell phone Batman. You are running around, you are Batman with guns, and your whole thing is that you're running around, you're a vigilante, you're stopping crime. But they haven't really set up any context for why you're doing any of this, or why you can kind of go around just killing criminals all willy nilly and no one seems, like what the context for any of that is. So I sometimes I don't know, I'm a little worried that there's not necessarily enough justification for some of the shit that you're doing in that game. Maybe there is, they just haven't shown any of it yet. I don't know. But I don't know. There's just something weird about, about the setting and the tone of it compared with, what little context they've shown for it. It feels like it's one of those games where you're supposed to be doing, good things in the name of justice and all of that, and then you're just kind of going around mowing down people, all recklessly. Like it's that. I hate the term. I understand people fucking think it's ludicrous, and you're right. Ludonarrative dissonance. I get it, but I get that feeling from it. Very similar to some of the feelings I had to say something like Sleeping Dogs, where you're an undercover cop and then you're running around, you're blowing up cop cars. It's like.
At least Sleeping Dogs had a real sense of humor about itself.
This doesn't seem to have a whole lot of sense of humor thus far.
Yeah, and I'll be curious. It makes sense when you're marketing a game to show off the explosions and the action and the set pieces that are appropriate to those moments. Stealth isn't as sexy. A no-kill playthrough isn't as interesting. So. I haven't been paying close enough attention to have a good sense of if they've even been maybe talking about that stuff, saying like, "Hey, it's there." Because I think when that original trailer for Watch Dogs launched, like there was this sort of a common response was, "I was really on board until he pulled out the gun."
Yeah.
And I expect there to be shooting. I expect to kill dudes in that game. I'm not. I'd be hard pressed to imagine that you could be full on stealth. Maybe you can, but I'm hopeful that the world they're setting up, the mechanics they're setting up, seem to suggest that if you're smart, you should be able to kind of get around that world generally without a whole lot of confrontation. And so I hope that's true.
They showed some of that. I mean, they were very adamant that any sort of situation where you're going into a mission where you have to take out a bunch of enemies or pull off a certain objective, you can do it stealthily. You can do it without alerting enemies, but they weren't real clear on whether you can do that by not killing them or just by say snapping their necks versus running up and shooting everybody. In fact, the one time they started to try and do a stealthy playthrough, the guy who was showing the demo kind of fucked up and said, screw it, and just started shooting everybody. So it was like, I don't really...
accurate, true to life. Yeah. That's usually how my playthroughs go as well.
Yeah, and again, there totally may be context for all that stuff that kind of puts it all together and makes it work. It's just that they haven't really shown it to me yet, so I kind of don't really know what to make of any of that yet.
I'm trying to look up the release date of Watch Dogs.
November, isn't it? Just like everything else?
Yeah, the 11 release date. It's a PS4 11/12. It is released. That doesn't make any sense. It can't be releasing early on PS4. I'm going to assume this is all 11/19. Looks like it launches more or less across the board at the same time, whereas Assassin's Creed is staggered. It's going to be early on 360 and PS3, and then come out for the next gen systems. I intend to play that game, but it seems like I should wait those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I intend to either play the PC version or play one of the next gen versions to have something to play on those machines that I'm going to be buying. I think I'm definitely going to wait to try either of those on those new consoles, if only like I said, to have something to do on them.
Fair enough. And then, in addition to that stuff, yesterday I went and saw a bunch of next-gen sports games, actually.
Yeah.
Microsoft, in partnership with EA, brought a bunch of people out to go see Madden, FIFA, and then a brief demo on UFC, which is not out until next year. So unfortunately, the best thing that they showed about Madden is embargoed until next Tuesday, so I can't really say anything about it.
Okay.
What I can say is that, yeah, it looks kind of better, and some of the player momentum stuff feels better on this version. Certainly better than the current console versions, but by and large, it is Madden. And I mean that in a way that is, they did not strip a bunch of shit out for this version of Madden like they did the last console launch. This time it is actually just Madden. Like the Madden they put out, on other consoles this year, except it looks a lot better and it has, some different momentum and physics stuff. Plus another feature which I cannot talk about yet. Sorry.
Okay.
FIFA is pretty much the same way. They've done a lot more dynamic visual stuff with like replays and camera stuff, like much bigger arena and crowd type shit. But I mean, again, functionally, it is FIFA. They have added again more physics, more of the that same kind of momentum stuff that's in Madden, but functionally, it is FIFA, the exact same game that you played before, or didn't play this year until because you were waiting for the next gen. It's the same thing, same features, all that stuff. UFC does look damn impressive, especially considering they didn't have the build there, so you couldn't play it because it's kind of not really ready for that yet. But the guy was showing off a lot of differences between like Fight Night and their last MMA game and what they're doing now. And there's just a lot of it. I mean, it's two guys in a ring, so there's a lot of stuff that you can kind of feed into that visually and from a gameplay perspective. And so they're trying to do a whole lot to just make it, as with sports games, to make it look as realistic as possible.
Well, I mean, Fight Night was one of the early holy shit moments for this current generation where, sports used to be sort of the hallmark of, hey, we've got a new set of hardware. Less so these days, but when you can focus in on two characters, you can really show off some of the nuance that's capable, especially early on, because you can just add on the polygons and you can really focus in and hone in on something that isn't possible in most other genres. So it's not a surprise that you found UFC to be impressive, because it seems to be that if they made a new Fight Night, it would probably be equally impressive in the same way.
And the stuff that they're doing all seems pretty good. I mean, it's it's things like they're going to the most subtle details they can now. So like, when a guy is straining, like all the tendons in his neck will start bulging out, the way a guy will when, he's like trying to put a guy in a submission hold or whatever. Like faces constantly are changing and shifting, emotions and just the form and function of the face is just constantly in flux. And there's a lot more contact between the two guys. Like they were showing some of the old MMA stuff, and it was like you get a guy in a grapple, his arms are like a solid 2-3 inches away from the body, like when he's holding him. So it's sort of like he has this force field around him that is actually doing the lifting. Now there's there's total contact between the guys in the cage, and like you'll see their flesh start lumping up as they get next to each other. Like it's like really weird, like little details like that are kind of creepy, but at the same time kind of awesome if you're into that sort of stuff. Like if you want the most realistic looking fighting game you possibly can think of, that seems to be the direction they're headed in. So that stuff all looks good. And then they showed the NFL app for Xbox One, which sure, that seems fine if you want to watch a bunch of extra clips and have access to fantasy stats and other shit while you're watching.
But only for
football.
NFL.com. And no one uses NFL.com.
They are going to add more fantasy sport
in
leagues
2014. It's launching in November, which is already kind of too late.
Well, no, but that's the thing, though, is that's why they're doing it this year just on NFL.com, because by the time that wraps up, the season will only have like a month and a half left at that point.
Yeah.
So next year they'll be able to add in more leagues, more stuff, and actually do it from the get-go.
I hope so, because like what they is, I sit and watch fantasy football with I have Sunday Ticket. I have the game I'm watching, usually like the Bears game, on the TV, and then I have Sunday Ticket running on my iPad on the table, and then I have my phone open and I'm watching the fantasy stuff. And holy shit, it would be nice if all that fantasy stuff was just layered over on the TV.
And that's exactly what they're doing here.
And it looks really nice. Like the idea that, like, hey, Adrian Peterson just broke through, ran 60 yards. Like, you want to watch that clip? Like, yeah. I think the idea of, like, being able to pull your fantasy clips and seeing those highlights, like, especially because as I've been learning, and you have this even worse on the East Coast, like, shit runs late at night. And, like, sometimes I just go to bed, like, especially if it's a game I'm not particularly interested in. But I love to watch the highlights of the players I had invested the next morning. So, yeah, you're right. It makes total sense that 3/4 through the season, at least the regular season, it would be NFL.com only, given the partnership. But I really hope there is ESPN and Yahoo, because those are the ones that people use.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, the guys seemed pretty adamant that they were going to add more stuff next year, so I'm kind of hopeful about that stuff.
All right.
The one last thing that was weird about all of that is that no NBA whatsoever, like not even a presentation, not even like a brief, hey, we're still doing this, not like some slides or nothing, just no NBA live whatsoever at this event, which I thought
And that's
was
launching soon.
It's launching with consoles. It's launching as a next gen thing.
Hot, baby. Shit's
Coming
coming
in hot.
Man,
Yeah.
that's a bad sign. Did they even acknowledge it, or they just pretend it didn't exist?
I asked, hey, so is NBA here? And they're like, no, we're not ready to show that.
No, sorry, we've had 4 years to put together a shippable game, and we're still not sure.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on with that game. I kind of don't know what to make of any of that. I'm just, when they said that, I was just like, okay, whatever you say.
Weird.
And left it at that. So we'll see how that turns out.
Weird. So that kind of cover the spread?
That was my week.
Yeah. I don't know if I have too much to add about GTA, except that my wife is out of town this week on a business trip. So this was like, this is it. This is the week. I'm going to spend all of my evenings working through this game. I need to be able to checkbox this and say I'm done with it. And I'm in the sort of final sprint. The story has started coming together. Characters are finding out things that they needed to find out, and I have a sense of what the final heist is. And I gotta say, the one thing I will say is, so early on when you do the first heist and you're given options to sort of choose who your other characters are, your support staff, and they take different cuts based on their skill set. And the game's like, well, if you choose people that are less skilled, that's okay, because they might screw up this heist, but they'll be better on the next heist, and the cut that they take doesn't change. There aren't that many heists in the game.
There aren't.
Like if you're going to have a mechanic like that, I assumed that there would be a couple of main heists, and then there would just be a bunch of side stuff where that actually came into play. But there's not zero, but it feels like very few heists.
There aren't a lot, and I get the impression that this is going to be more DLC at some point. Like there are going to be more heists, maybe added to the game somewhere down the road to actually make that stuff make sense. Because yeah, you're exactly right. Like I've had exactly 2 heists where I've been able to use the same guy twice. Like that's it. So it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of opportunity to really develop anyone in your crew,
No, and the money is useful, I guess, if you want to get into the property stuff and do the stock market, as that interacts with the assassination missions. But the money's, really not that important. You will always have enough cash to buy all the guns you want if you want to customize your character in that fashion. You only really need money if you want to get into some of the more extravagant side stuff. So yeah, I was just genuinely surprised as I hit what feels like the 3/4 corner of the game, and like it doesn't seem like there's going to be like 6 more heists in a row where it makes sense for there to be character progression for these optional characters. So I can't help but get the feeling that there were a lot more heists in this game at some point. It just doesn't make sense to set that up without having more reasons to play in it.
Yeah, that was kind of a bummer for me, but Again, I'm hopeful that somewhere in the DLC cycle there will be more of that stuff, because the ones that are in there, most of them are pretty good. So,
yeah, the heists are super fun, they're goofy in the appropriate way, and I like the way that you swap between the different characters, because those would otherwise just be moments where AI was doing something scripted, and I thoroughly enjoyed the heists, and I really just wanted more of them. And I just found it confusing that there were mechanics laid on top of it that essentially were developed and they go nowhere.
I think they just ran out of scenes from Heat to borrow liberally from, so they have to find some other heist movies to steal some shit from, unfortunately.
Yeah.
May I recommend David Mamet's Heist? That's another good one if they want to take some stuff. There's some good Gene Hackman material in there to take from. Speaking of GTA, if we want to get into a little bit of news, I'm curious, have you actually been able to get into GTA Online at all? Because guess what, son? I have not.
No, I was going to play with Brad and Vinny and Jeff on Tuesday, and so I patched things. I went through the character customization, tried to get it to the point where, hey, go out in this world, do whatever you want, and no, I never got past the loading screen for the first race.
Me either.
Which seemed to be a sticking point for a lot of people, but I only tried on the first day, as everyone that works from home or is in a different time zone and was at home and able to play was trying. I have not tried since. Jeff's sort of ambivalence toward it when he actually got into it, I sort of suggest that I might not check it out again. But I
Keep
do
in
have
mind that Jeff is ambivalent toward a lot of things.
I know,
so
that's true. But I was already sort of ambivalent. Like, I don't need a whole lot of reason to not check this out.
sure.
But I do have a buddy of mine who's local that's obsessed with GTA 5 and really wants to get into online when he's done with the story. So I suspect that at some point in the near future I will jump on with him and see what it's all about. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other, except that I don't normally participate in this sort of stuff. So the one time that I did, it didn't work, and it's just like, yep, all right, well, I'll just go play a single player game.
I tried a couple of times. I haven't even gotten the character creator to completely work for me. Like, I've just been having a shit time even getting the social club Rockstar stuff to connect for me. I'm probably just picking the worst times possible, like in the evening, when everyone's going home and trying to hammer on that shit. But I have not gotten anywhere with it, which is unfortunate, but we'll see how that goes. But there is an update coming, I guess, tomorrow, according to Rockstar, that should hopefully alleviate some of this stuff. The reaction to this has been interesting to watch, because there are a lot of people that seem to believe that we should be exactly as outraged as we were at EA over something like SimCity, because it's a big part of the game that is just not functioning whatsoever.
Right.
And there's a whole other subset of people that's like, this is no big deal. Just wait for the servers to hammer themselves out. It's all going to be fine eventually. Just don't worry about it. I sit somewhere in the middle, I think, where I think you have every right to be totally upset at this big chunk of the game that was sort of advertised and packaged as part of the deal does not work really very well. There was no beta that anyone is aware of for this whole thing. Like, they never really tested it out in a public forum. It being broken like this is not surprising, but still pretty upsetting in its own way. But I also think the SimCity thing is a total false equivalency, because that game, you could not play any of it when the servers were down. There was nothing you could do with it. Well, you could not load it up. There was nothing you could do. That is a far worse situation than what this is. This sucks. This is worth complaining about, but this is not the same. You can't put the two things on the same level, I don't think.
No, yeah. There's a big old game with tons of stuff that you probably haven't gotten to yet that you can dive into. But that said, Rockstar is an incredibly arrogant company. They have earned the right to be arrogant. Certainly, I think there is a little bit of ha-ha as they have like a real stumbling block, running into something that lots of other studios have run into before.
Also, I'm sorry, but not to interrupt. I'm told that that title update is today, not tomorrow. So that is apparently out today. So good for them.
So we'll see. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like anything else. If you wait a week, if you can wait a week, 99% of those problems are going to go away, and I expect this to be a similar situation. I'm far more interested in whether it's actually interesting than whether it's having launch issues, because everything has launch issues. Like, I'm sort of over that, especially when it's not locking you out of the main single player component. I'm curious to see if it's actually interesting. I want to what do you even do in there? I still don't have a good sense of it. And
I want to play it.
That's what I'm curious about. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I will definitely give it a shot. I feel like it's one of those things that I need to at least sit down and spend an hour or two with, so I can definitively say, hey, this isn't for me. But at least I know what it is.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right.
What other news stuff you got there, Patrick?
Well, Tom Clancy passed away.
Yeah, he did.
Which is a bummer. His work has certainly had a positive impact on video games, even though he has not been involved in the games that Ubisoft has been producing, invoking his name and sort of like some of the themes and settings
and selling
of his characters.
Name, frankly.
Yeah, he sold his name to them. So I do expect they'll continue to use it. I don't think this will be a situation where they retire it as a
No, no,
result.
no, no.
The Tom Clancy name, to be honest, represents something more than the person Tom Clancy. It represents it's a genre, essentially. And
He's a brand at this point. Like
yeah,
he's the Colonel Sanders of military literary world. Like he basically anything you put anything under the Tom Clancy umbrella, and it will evoke a certain understanding of this is about military shit. It's it doesn't matter what medium it's in, books, movies, games, whatever. It's just like you put Tom Clancy on something, you know exactly what you're getting. So of course they're not going to retire that. That's not going to happen.
yeah, and I've dipped into those games over the years, especially as Ubisoft has widened, what exactly is kind of filed under that genre. It started with Rainbow Six,
Yeah.
back when there was a I don't know, does Red Storm Entertainment still exist? Are they still
Yes,
a
it does
subsidiary?
exist as an entity under Ubisoft.
And I was super into Rainbow Six for a while. I was terrible at it, not any good. Don't think I got very far into the game, but I was
No.
fascinated by the idea of setting up a plan and then executing that in the game, as opposed to what you do in most games back then and now is just sort of reacting on the fly. And it was you died so quickly in those games. Like it was a one shot and you're dead. Move over to the next character, sort of style of game, and it was incredibly difficult, but also super fascinating for what it was trying to do. Because most games don't involve a whole lot of pre-planning before you're actually sort of dropped into the experience. And so it was definitely fascinating at the time, and hell, it would still be fascinating now because I can't think of any game that's doing something akin to that.
Yeah, I admittedly I was a much bigger fan of when I was younger the books, and then later on the movies than I ever really was of the games. When Ghost Recon came out, I was not into super tactical type shooters. I was more into run and gun type stuff, so it never really struck me. But I've played my share of Splinter Cells and Ghost Recons and other things, or Rainbow Sixes over the years, and there's no denying what the kind of power behind that brand and just sort of the breadth of stuff that's come out under it. And and a lot of those games are really, really good. Like a lot of that Splinter Cell stuff, really, really good. And there's that Division game, which actually looks pretty awesome. I don't know how it ties to Tom Clancy, but it doesn't really matter. I'm interested in it. So,
Yeah.
Did you ever read any of the books?
No, no. I've certainly seen some of the movies,
Yeah.
just because I think that's fairly unavoidable. But yeah, for whatever reason, never got into Tom Clancy as a kid. Maybe I was too busy just rereading Goosebumps. I don't know. When do you get into Tom Clancy? In like middle school or high school?
I got into Tom Clancy like 8th, 9th grade. I tried reading it before that, but I was frankly way too young and way too dumb to understand any of what he was talking about because those are some technical ass books. Yeah. That dude loves to describe in just excruciating detail war boats. And just and when there's a gun in that game, in one of those books, he will talk about that gun and its use and its purpose in just insane detail. Someone said he was the George R.R. Martin of military shit in just the way that he just over describes everything, and that's not inaccurate whatsoever. But at the same time, the stories were always pretty entertaining, and up to a certain, I think I got up to like Sum of All Fears, and that's where I kind of stopped reading his stuff regularly. But those first like 5 or 6 books are all pretty good to great in terms of like actual storytelling. So the guy was a hell of a writer, and he became the brand he did by force of talent, not just by marketing or whatever. Like the guy could write, and the guy obviously had a lot of good stories behind him. So. Hey, rest in peace, Tom.
Yeah, and if people are interested, because he was more heavily involved in the earlier games. If you do a quick like Google search for Tom Clancy, Rainbow Six, and Gama Sutra, they have a post-mortem up where the development team kind of talks about what exactly Tom Clancy had input on back when this was first getting off the ground, and he had a little more hands-on approach with how exactly they were going to adapt and implement the stuff that he had been writing. So yeah, hearts go out to the family, and but looking forward to seeing what Ubisoft does in the future with his stuff. What do you got?
Oh, let's see. There's Well, the Wii's production is officially coming to an end here soon. Nintendo Japan has apparently made it known that they will soon be ceasing all production of the original Wii console. This is a little. I mean, I guess this is only soon in comparison to something like, say, the PlayStation 2, which continued to roll off the line for many years after the PlayStation 3 came out. In this case, the Wii's been around since what, 2007, and
Hmm.
now that the Wii U's been out for a year, they're getting ready to wind it down. Patrick, are you sad at all about this? Do you have any fond Wii memories? Do you have any real nostalgia for that console at this point, or is it just kind of like, nah, I've moved on? Because that's kind of where I'm at this point.
Yeah, I don't really get sad about the end of a manufacturing line necessarily, but yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the Wii. Impressive to watch Nintendo crawl its way back to relevance in a way that even when it was first getting unveiled, people dismissed out of hand, and then the moment people started actually playing it, realizing that Nintendo was maybe onto something. I think even in the years after the Wii launched, Nintendo never quite knew what they had on their hands themselves. I think the Wii Sports was the best implementation of motion control that they came up with, and they didn't quite know what to do with it themselves afterwards. I think there were plenty of wonderful games for the Wii. I think the Wii got a pretty terrible rap for not having quality releases when I think there was plenty to play on that, especially if you were taking into account Virtual Console and a number of great games that were on the eShop. I think there was a lot of really good stuff for the Wii, but pretty early on, people got disenchanted with motion controls and thus sort of wrote off the console and weren't even paying attention to its lineup anymore. So even the quality stuff that was getting released on that machine was sort of dismissed out of hand because, wham, motion controls. And I always found that really frustrating, and it's part of why I kind of went out of my way during the middle of its life to pay specific attention to it, because it just seemed like, for the most part, the people I knew, colleagues and otherwise, just had kind of gotten over the machine unless they were pulling it out for friends and family when you were having people over to hang out and they wanted to play bowling or tennis, um, and yeah, and it's fun to watch Nintendo get backed up against a wall and surprise everyone, and I'm I'm curious to see if they can pull that off again, because they seem to have been put into that corner even faster than they did the last time around. And I think Nintendo is always its most interesting at its most desperate, because it is definitely not a company that throws in the towel. And if anything, they grasp on for dear life and then hit you with a sucker punch that you don't see coming. And maybe they won't do that again, but I'm more inclined to give Nintendo the benefit of the doubt that they might figure something out.
Yeah, I want to. I mean, I'm just looking at my Wii shelf here and I'm realizing there's actually a bunch of games that I forgot were on the Wii and were also pretty good. Hey, remember Punch Out? Remember Kirby's Epic Yarn? Remember,
Yeah,
both
Super
Super
Mario
Mario
Galaxy,
Galaxies?
one of the
Fucking
greatest
remember
games of
Trauma
all
Center?
time.
Yeah. Remember Trauma Center? Remember all that weird, like early crazy Atlas motion shit that was actually pretty good?
Also, Boom Blocks was rad. Don't hate on Boom
Yeah.
Blocks.
Moonblocks was totally all right. No More Heroes, fucking Mad World. Like, I got all this shit over here. It's all pretty good. Like there were
Metroid
some
Prime
great.
3 was rad.
Yeah,
Bit Trip
there's some great
Runner.
games on the system, and it's nice that you can actually just play them on your Wii U now. In semi HD at least, and I don't have to just kind of shove them away the way I've been reorganizing my game shelf. So I've had having to put all my like Xbox and PS2 stuff away finally. I don't know why I just had that stuff out. I finally couldn't keep it out anymore, but. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff for that system, and I think it's like you said, it's unfair to kind of dismiss it out of hand. There was a pretty great roster of games. I'm worried that the Wii U at this point is not getting that that kind of level of games coming to it. And I read something the other day that was I forget what site it was on, but it was kind of like a look at what's ahead for next year as far as what's coming for the Wii U, and it's not a lot. It's pretty grim right now. Like they were able to list like 6 or 7 games, at least 3 of which they have not really shown anything for whatsoever. So, like I said, like you said, when they're backed into a corner, maybe they do some of their best work. But right now, they're backed into the corner. We're not seeing a whole hell of a lot for it, which is worrying to me.
Yeah, I did. That's I think that is accurate. They have not laid out a lineup for 2014 that is particularly inspiring.
No.
Especially given that I can't imagine that Zelda is going to be a game that comes out next year. That seems like
If
the
it
kind of
is, it's going to
game.
be at the very tail end of next year.
Yeah, if it is, but I mean, I hard pressed to imagine that game's going to come out all that quickly. But maybe, and that's also one of the funny things about Nintendo, right? Like any other company would say, "Hey, go fuck yourself. Get that game out by holiday 2014," and yet Nintendo will probably, frustratingly, say it's coming out in holiday 2015.
Yeah.
And that also is in line with, Iwata when he made comments to shareholders when they asked, why aren't you doing the traditional model of you're having losses, you're having trouble achieving profitability, lay some people off. And his response was, well, if you lay people off, you hurt their enthusiasm to be creative and safe at a company, and we need those people to survive going forward. We need them to be happy. And maybe the idealistic nature is not what's going to save Nintendo. Maybe you need someone like a Yamauchi who is cutthroat and heartless and doesn't know what it's like to be in the trenches, but it's hard to hate on a guy that has a perspective like that, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And God, let's just hope it all works out.
Yeah, man.
I'll leave it at that.
I want Nintendo to stick around. Is it your turn, or
it's your turn. I've got mostly short headlines at this point, so.
Well, they're doing a new Deus Ex.
Yeah.
Big shock. They're doing a sequel to Human Revolution, and Eidos Montreal, which is in the final stages of developing a new Thief game to come out early next year, which, based on what I've played so far, not very good. Hopefully that changes. I also had, I guess I'll say, I'll qualify that with, I did not have the greatest first impressions of Human Revolution when I first played that either, and that ended up being one of my favorite games of that year, and I think a worthy successor.
Yeah,
if a flawed successor.
People weren't bagging on Deus Ex like at regular the way that everyone I know who has played that Thief remake has sort of come away from it.
Right.
So.
Yeah. No. I believe me. I feel a little more qualified in what I'm saying there, but at the same, they aren't the type of games that demo particularly well.
Sure.
For sure. But I really enjoyed Human Revolution. I felt like it was as much as you could ask for from a reboot of Deus Ex, and to see those guys getting the chance to make another one of those is really heartening. And then they also announced that they're doing this Deus Ex universe, which is more like the all-encompassing brand that will incorporate graphic novels and books and a potential film and other things like that. I didn't touch the iOS game because I didn't have a whole lot of interest in playing a Deus Ex game that way, especially because they sort of just tried to make a console Deus Ex game in an iOS format. I'd be happy to play one that was maybe a little more adapted to that device, but didn't have a whole lot of interest in what they were trying there.
Sure.
But yeah, I cannot wait for another Deus Ex. I am really happy, especially given all the financial troubles that Square has been talking about, even for their successful games, that Eidos Montreal is going to get a shot at making another one of those.
I think for me, I can totally wait for another Deus Ex, but I will totally play it when it does come out. Like, I liked Human Revolution fine. I think it's a neat game. I didn't love it. I also didn't completely finish it. I got probably solid 2/3 of the way through it, and then got stuck playing other things and just forgot about it. But I did enjoy what I played of it quite a lot, and I am certainly looking forward to what they do. But I wouldn't say it's on my list of, man, I need that sequel right now because that was the hottest shit. It was more just like, no, that was really fun. I look forward to seeing what they do next.
Yeah. Oh, hey, we were just ragging on Nintendo's lineup, but holy shit, Super Mario 3D World looks unbelievable.
That does look pretty great. Like that trailer that went up on the site this week. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely go check it out. It's the weird and fucking just out there Nintendo that you haven't necessarily seen a whole lot of super recently. So in that it is just, they are just throwing crazy shit at the Mario wall, and most of it seems to be sticking.
And this new trailer, I don't know if it was deliberate. I kind of get the impression that it was deliberate. it was single-player focused. It showed largely just one character going through this world. I think people, including myself, I like playing. I've liked Nintendo's experiments with having, multiplayer Mario games. I think it's worked better than anyone could have expected. But Super Mario 3D Land is, I have said, could be reasonably argued to be the best 3D Mario of the modern age. And I was bummed that if we're getting a sequel to that in a console form, that it was maybe going to be a little watered down in favor of facilitating multiple characters or multiple players. And everything about that trailer suggests that is just how they decided to present that game at E3, and that this is going to be just fine for me and for anyone that wants to play it by themselves, because it looks like the Galaxy team making a new Mario game, and could not be more excited about that. That is somehow it went from a game that I knew I was going to play and I was probably going to like to, oh my god, I screw the next gen console launches, like that's the game I want to play. Given that comes out the same day as
the Xbox One,
and the Xbox One, like, man, that day is just going to be nuts.
It's fucked. It's a totally fucked day, and I'm really sad about that because that means no one's going to buy that damn Mario game, which is really too bad because, yeah, it's exactly what you said. I went from being interested in it on a basic level to, okay, yeah, no, that's probably in like the top 3 or 4 games I really want to be playing, this holiday season. Like that is where I want to be focusing my time. Because, again, when Nintendo gets weird and they get wacky with that shit and they get super referential and goofy, that is when they are at their best. And that game looks like, the absolute embodiment of that, and I'm excited. I also really like the subtle detail that apparently I don't know if all of them do, but I know Luigi and I think Princess do, have their same basic kind of like different abilities that they had in Super Mario Brothers 2. So Luigi has that kind of weird, leg crazy jump, and I think Princess has like her little float and stuff. Like, little references like that. I kind of like when they bring back every now and again. They don't do it very often, but when they do, it's nice. Because I love Super Mario Brothers 2. Not enough people talk about that game.
And I love all the little touches in that trailer. For example, the cat suit, which I think is awesome.
Yes.
And when I played with it at E3, it was awesome. The little touch of when you get to the flagpole at the end, you can climb up the flagpole to get to the top.
Catsuit, man. Catsuit is the best
God
shit. Catsuit is totally the best shit.
No wonder Miyamoto was so excited about it. People were making fun of him. But you didn't know. You didn't know. We didn't know. So, holy cow, I am excited for that game in a way that I have not been. And I cannot wait for that to come out in November for sure.
Should we prepare ourselves for some questions? Get through some quick headlines here?
Yeah. If people have any questions, why don't you shoot them over to us in the chat? Just shoot them at Patrick Klepek, and we will grab a couple of those as we bring this morning show to a close.
All right.
Why don't you shoot some headlines?
All right. The Warcraft movie is coming to theaters in December 2015. Patrick, will they even have 1 million subscribers to World of Warcraft by that point?
Oh, probably.
All right.
Probably. I think.
I'm just thinking about the rate of decline at this point. It's like, it's like 1 million every quarter or something, or that's not quite that high, but it's definitely a lot as the years have gone on the last couple of years.
I think the cachet of the World of Warcraft brand, which I just think people that even aren't into the games that much know what that is or have heard of it. I think that carries a lot of weight that has nothing to do with the decline of an MMO that should have declined a lot earlier than it is.
I'm not saying people won't go see the movie. I'm just wondering how many subscribers will even be on World of Warcraft by December 2015 at the current rate things are going.
What I'm curious about is essentially you have a film coming out as a game is in decline, and they're setting it out to pasture as they prepare their next game. How do they handle that game as that movie comes closer? So do they try and reinvent World of Warcraft? Is the reason that their new MMO was sort of scrapped and then restarted because they're like, hey, now we have a target date, which is December 2015. We want to launch this or have a beta or something ready to go for that film. It would seem like an enormously missed opportunity to not be able to capitalize on. Like, this isn't going to be like a tiny fantasy film. Like, Legendary seems like they're getting behind this in a really big way. Is this part of their new Universal partnership, or is this still Warner Brothers? I don't know.
I think it's Warner Brothers.
Okay.
Or it might be. You know what? I have no idea.
That's getting into the weeds in a way that doesn't matter. It's going to be It's going to be a big movie. Like the reception to, I guess, the teaser, sort of like trailer, like sort of sizzle reel, like of how he wants it to look that Duncan Jones put together at Comic-Con went over exceptionally well. That somehow apparently pleased people that like the game and that also came across as a weird fantasy western, which sounds awesome.
Yes, I'm into that idea.
Yeah, I'm curious, and I'm still getting over the fact that Duncan Jones follows me on Twitter now, as he is now going off to film his biggest film yet.
Well, there's a good chance he won't be paying too much attention to your Twitter feed while he's doing that, but it is a lovely gesture.
I did enjoy that he so weirded me out after he started following me because like David Bowie is probably my favorite artist of all time. So just my mind had trouble processing the whole idea. But then he tweeted at me like a week later after I tweeted out some video. He's like, "Oh, this is a cool video, man. I'm glad I started following you." I was like, "Okay, Duncan Jones.
Whatever you say, dude. You're David Bowie's son. That's weird."
I can't say anything about David Bowie on Twitter ever again now.
Nope. Not a chance.
It's been taken off my list.
Oh, let's see, what else we got? The mighty number 9 has concluded its crowdfunding efforts with more than $4 million in funding. Is this going to be the greatest crowdfunded game ever, or just the most expensive ever, Patrick?
I think it's like the number 3 of games. Side note, before I respond to that, I guess people are pointing out in the chat that Jason Schreier tweeted that Yahoo and ESPN Fantasy Football will be on Xbox One next year.
See, I told you they were working on that stuff. So
that's good to know. Yeah, I'm super encouraging that Japan has a potential new outlet for their independent scene. There are probably a fair number of developers that could go on Kickstarter and raise probably not as much money as Mighty Number 9 did. It's a pretty unique situation, but that this is an outlet for them as the independent scene in Japan sort of figures itself out. So I'm curious to see who this enables, what this enables, and I hope Inafune makes a good game. You know, that's ultimately what I want out of it. I'd love a next gen Mega Man, and I'm curious to see how, because now it's also funded for Xbox One and PS4. Whether they're gonna like make it for the higher platforms and scale down, or they make it for the lower platforms and scale up. But I'm certainly looking forward to the next-gen versions of those games, for sure.
For sure. Last question from me. You being the #1 Sonic the Hedgehog fan that I know you are, what are you more excited for? Sonic Boom, the cartoon headed to Cartoon Network next year, or Sonic the Hedgehog and Super Smash Brothers? Eh? What are you more excited for, Patrick?
What's Sonic Boom about?
It's a computer animated cartoon about Sonic and friends, you know.
All right, well, they're good. Okay, Sonic and Friends. Yeah, not interested.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know. The Wii U game looks like it could be okay.
Yeah. Lost World.
But Mario 3D World is coming out, so.
So there you go. What are you gonna do? Take your pick. Choose your sides right now. You can only pick one.
Yeah, that's not a choice. Fear is a choice, but that is not a choice.
Fear is a choice that you choose to indulge in many, many times over.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true. Speaking of, the teaser trailer for Amnesia, the Dark Descent developer, Frictional Games, the new game called Soma.
Yeah, I watched that.
Which seems to be teasing that it will be set in space or sci-fi in nature at least, have something to do with AI and robots and weird CRT screens attached to like Reaper-looking type creatures. I don't know. I might suggest that people pay attention to the site sometime late next week if they would like to know more about what those guys are up to.
I would definitely like to know more.
Yeah.
That's all I got. There was some stuff about 38 Studios today, but I am reluctant to even dig back into that ever again because of all the emotions. So.
Yeah. Is it Destiny beta early next year? That game looks pretty cool. I'm still not quite blown away about it in the way that I was with Titanfall, but I don't know, that's partially because it's, Destiny sort of looks like an amalgamation of other games we've seen before, right? Like it's a co-op loot shooter, so it's like, okay, well, it's got some elements of what people are familiar with in a game, maybe like Borderlands, but it doesn't have a distinctive look and style like Borderlands. And then, at least with Titanfall, like you have something super distinctive, like giant mechs. Like that's completely separates that from anything else. And Destiny, I think, looks really good and is probably going to play exceptionally well. But at least this far in, like I feel like I need to play it before it's going to click for me in a way that some other shooters that are coming up have.
Didn't someone from Bungie just leave, like one of the main creative people?
Lead writer.
That's right. I don't know. I only tangentially caught that story, but I saw that someone from
Staten.
Yes. Did he say where he was headed?
I think he's going to go do his own thing. Tackle new creative challenges. That sounds like he has earned the right to go do something off on his own.
I agree.
That seems like enough. Let's
do some questions.
Answer some questions. Common reason. Do you think Monolith will ever make Condemned 3? No.
No.
I think that there's a rights issue there. Because there's a rights issue, I think. Sega. Sega owns the rights to Condemned,
behind that.
And Monolith is owned by Warner Brothers. I do know that Condemned 3 was sort of conceived. I don't remember how much I was told about how far in development it was, but there were plans for Condemned 3. It's not like Condemned 2 ends on a pretty crazy cliffhanger that was not intended to be purely a cliffhanger. They had plans for a third one. God, I wish I could remember more about that conversation, but it sounded pretty crazy. But in all honesty, as fun as Condemned 2 got in its weirdness, it was definitely getting pretty far away from what I really enjoyed about the first one, which was it was scary as balls. And 2 had some elements of that, but definitely it was leaning pretty far into being wacky.
Right.
And I forgot that Condemned 1 came out on the PC, so I am going to play that at some time this month.
It did, didn't it? Shit.
And it was on my Steam account, so I do intend to play some of that later.
I don't think I played that game since launch of the Xbox, when that game came out.
Yeah, talk about a surprise launch game too. That was a badass launch game.
I remember Greg falling head over heels in love with that game when no one really knew that much about it when it came out, and I remember Greg just gushing endlessly about how brutal and violent it was, because that was Greg Kasavin really loves some brutal violence when it's done well. What else we got?
I don't know why everyone's asking about Ender's Game, or it's just one guy.
Oh.
Never seen 1-5-on-1. Not that excited for Ender's Game.
Me either.
Harrison Ford looks a little
wooden.
Yeah, he looks old. That's not even his fault, maybe necessarily. No. Just he doesn't look that great in
He looks like he doesn't really know why he's there, which could basically describe the last 4 or 5 Harrison Ford roles that I've seen. So there you go.
Al Kusanagi, has there been any more news about the Cyberpunk game from the Witcher guys? Nope.
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 They have not said a word. They are focused on Witcher 3 at the moment, so...
Yeah, very much looking forward to that game next year. That is high on my list. Our man Thorpe, yo dog, what's up with Pokemon on Giant Bomb? No one cares.
Yeah. Sorry.
Not even meant to be offensively so. I think there is just probably a persistent That's my thoughts on it.
It's Pokemans.
I don't know if you can answer this. You can not answer this. You can't. Azzy Style asks, do you think the ability to use a phone to play Beyond Two Souls is going to make it more accessible to non-gamers? I'll ask this. Have you downloaded that app? You should download that app.
I have not. I should do that. I'm going to finish the game the traditional way. Again, I don't have too much more to do. I will download that app, and I will try that before I review it and see how it is. I am not convinced that's really how I would want to be playing a game like that, but I will give it a shot. Thing I did not realize, this game has 2-player, and I don't really know what that is yet. I still need to figure out what the two-player component of this game is supposed to be, because I'm not really entirely certain how that all would fit together. So we'll see. There's still things I need to learn about that game while I still try to get through the main story.
Yeah, I'd be curious. Yeah, even if it doesn't, play into your review at all, I would love to hear how that works. Exactly. I think it's a fascinating idea, even if it doesn't quite get pulled off here. Spraydnard Tatum, I think, says, any day when Routine is coming out, I do. I'm not allowed to say, but I will have a lengthy interview with the lead designer on Routine next week. So look forward to that. Try to answer one more. Let's see. Oh, here's one that's... Oh, you got me. Poto Skull asks, Poto Skull? Thoughts on Zelda's new approach to items? He was specifically referencing that during the Nintendo Direct earlier this week, Iwata pointed out that in the new Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, that you don't have to approach the dungeons in sort of a designer-specific manner. And in addition to that, you don't have to... Not every dungeon is centered around puzzles unique to a specific item.
Okay.
So they're basically introducing some aspects of non-linearity or player choice in terms of how they tackle both dungeons and the order of the dungeons. It seems like up front you're going to go to a storefront and all of the main items are going to be there, and you can both rent and purchase items. So you can rent items, but it's very expensive to purchase them. The idea being, I think that will limit some of your lineup before you realize, hey, I actually only, like, maybe the game's not expecting you to have everything, and that you're only going to have, 3 or 4 that you actually are your go-to items. But it's like, hey, I need this one for this dungeon, but I really don't care for it, so I'm just going to rent it and get through these puzzles and move on. I think it's an interesting idea.
Can I rent to own? Is there like a leasing program that I can take out for a boomerang? Like, are Troy Aikman and Hulk Hogan going to come out and talk about how it's the best way to get the bomb bag is to rent to own? Is that how this is going to work?
Maybe, yeah. It's just some real life finance. Maybe there'll be a financial crisis in the new Zelda as well.
That sounds like a totally reasonable idea. I mean, I'll admit that one of the things I've liked about the Zelda series is that kind of weird slavish dedication to that progression of, no, you get the boomerang here, you get the hook shot here, you get this here, and here are all these puzzles that surround that stuff. But you know what? I'm totally fine with the idea of experimenting with that a little bit and seeing how that plays out. I would certainly enjoy the idea of being able to tackle certain dungeons when I feel like, as opposed to, shit, I gotta do the goddamn water temple again because I can't go anywhere else until I do this kind of deal.
Sure. Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if this is essentially sort of a working experiment to figure out, if you start breaking down some of these conventions, see how people respond, because everything that it's, is being set up for is that this Wii U one is going to be a pretty radical departure. Probably, still a Zelda game at its core, but saying that it doesn't need to necessarily adhere to a lot of the tropes that have become ingrained in the series, and maybe that is partially responsible for some of the games recently not being nearly as popular. So I'd be curious to see. Seems like the reception has been positive, but obviously that all comes down to implementation.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that's going to do it for the morning show.
I've got
for this week.
So much. I gotta play this. I gotta play some more of this today. That's what I gotta do. So
you gotta do that. What do you do? You're gonna review that. That's next Tuesday.
Tuesday morning is that embargo, so I will have that reviewed for you to read probably by Monday.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wrap up GTA this weekend.
Cool.
That's sort of like, wife's not home till Monday, so I've got a solid weekend to just do nothing, especially tomorrow. So GTA is going to be off my plate, and then my focus is, I don't know. I can play. I haven't touched Rayman Legends in a while. I'd really like to get back to that. But I don't expect.
You gonna go see Gravity this weekend?
I think my wife.
You have to wait for
if I saw
the wife. Yeah.
I wait till she gets back. What else do I need to play Puppeteer, but that's not immediate. I'll get
Nah.
around to that eventually. What else? I can't. What's the next? There's not much coming out for a couple weeks. Oh no, Beyond's coming out. I want to play Beyond, so
Yeah,
I need to get Grand Theft
Beyond's
Auto
out next
done so
week.
I can play Beyond.
Yeah. I'll try to keep the review as spoiler free as possible so that you will go in knowing as little as you can.
Excellent. All right. Well, Alex, as always, sort of a pleasure.
Indeed. Always, sir.
I will see you on Monday.